Hello, can everyone hear me okay? I have a really quiet voice, so just kind of make this gesture if you can't hear me okay. But thank you all for being here. It's just such a pleasure. And thank you to Chad and the press here for publishing my book, because I feel like it found the perfect home. So it's just really great to be here. I'll be reading some poems from that book, Chorus of the Underground Sea. And the first one is titled, I Prefer Broken Things. The chipped coffee mug, sweaters not yet mended, the farmhouse with no doors or windows, forever open to time drifting through. The scar above my son's eyebrow, mark of an ear blinding. Even your heart, I prefer it all banged up and slightly askew. That raw moment when we cannot ignore one another so well. Your eyes averted, your hands stilled on the table when I touch your thigh. After you've asked if we can heal, like it's one thing, something to wish for or expect. A dawn on another shore of this ever-turning world, the chance to cross the river's thin ice, already overburdened with snow. This next poem is an ekphrastic poem, meaning that it's a poem that responds to a painting, and the painting it responds to is The Pink Peach Tree by Van Gogh. The title of the poem is On Confessing My Symptoms to My Doctor. I am a pink peach tree, kind as a night in spring, dropping moons into your palms. I've roosted in this asylum for half a decade, a week, maybe a collection of hours, and I still cannot move with movements that are my own. I haven't been stayed by your anchors. My roots are the breeze. Today I unfold into whiteness. Tomorrow I may drop red leaves at your feet. This is only an imitation of a terminus. I do not become corpse, but mock its dryness, mock skin and marrow. Each blossom swells, sores I wrap in bandages, only to uncover them and find each still growing. Grant me your shocks and quivers, reverberations of a mind peeling back on itself, the angel-haired fire, for I want to burn like an old barn in the night, flames that bustle up my neck and out my eyes. What do I think of when you say the word healthy? I think of a tree falling down because an axe swings into its side over and over. In my world, an elm will fall on its back for no reason. Its foliage still shining, its trunk still strong, it sings as it falls. A hierarchy establishes itself in every kingdom. God placed man at the top to use lesser creatures. But what of lesser creatures who are not useful? Do you smell my flowering? How extravagant I can be? I am not a thing to be used or harvested, but instead you prune me, decide which parts can be kept. I do not envy your choices, your cabinet of drugs, your files of instructions on who will live how. Between man and tree, the tree will ghost the man. You have examined my tentacles, my octopus arms that stretch and foretell futures. You cannot reach my particular glow, the odd light gummed up in the back of my throat. Chorus of the Underground Sea. Beneath my feet, my ancestors stir. Their fins move soundlessly in water that haunts all I wanted and never had, for I have disappointed the depths, have fallen short of its measures. Still, that water irrigates my crops and my children grow tall. Their songs do not sing me to my death, but to the boundary beyond it, where dust does not darken the seabed plains and plateaus, where my ancestors cast no shadows on the brittle stars below them. They tell me, there are dreams in your mouth, but your mouth is sewn shut. My deathbed confession will be to the women under me who turned over and over, bubbles in their hair, turquoise water in their ears, and how little I thought of them. I thought only of my daily bread, and it weakened me. Rest, they will say, the earth is our tombstone. And I will rest before I enter your body in the water you drink. I will bless your bones before I call them home. Flea Market in Brownsville, Nebraska. The old man sits behind his booth in denim and plaid, a wad of tobacco in the pocket of his cheek. He nods at the people who pass his table, heavy with handmade clocks and his wife's crocheted doilies. A week before, his granddaughter died of eclampsia, the seizure catching her arms and legs, twisting her wrists, pulling her head back, pulse in her neck thudding, then slowing. He sits and waits. His heart ticks. For the first time in 30 years, he cannot remember a face after it passes him by. The faces are things, foreign things, objects on another person's table. And he also, an object on a chair, his skin the tin of a fishing box, rusted, still holding its tackle and bait. At her service, he watched the thrashing fires of votive candles. He knows the world shakes when you leave it. Even the branch quivers when a bird takes flight. This next one is also another ekphrastic poem, and it responds to another Van Gogh painting titled Peasant Girl. Measles, tuberculosis, cholera, diphtheria, smallpox, typhus, so many names to plague a body, and yet none of them are the reason you sit so strangely, so ill at ease. Your bonnet and apron hum with the same tone of the wheat field. Your dress sings the same blue as your eyes, which stare out into the distance, looking at nothing, wanting to see nothing. You have taken the years given to you and let them grow like sunflowers in the field, indistinguishable, all turned toward the sun. These years are now fossils above ground. The poppies can be seen in your cheeks, as though you are mirrored by your surroundings, as though you yourself could be made like wheat, into many different things with different names. This next poem is titled Depression, and it starts with an epigraph from the American Handbook of Psychiatry, 1874, which is, "Depression is a practice. And oh, have I practiced. I've practiced with my thumbs and tongue, my blinking in the morning, my breathing at night. I have practiced in each thought, found and nurtured it like a child in the palm of my hand, pinched it till it blisters, a blanched doll boiling in a pot. My wanton skeleton mimics your muscles, their clenching and releasing. I too take days off. On those days I don't count the ways I've failed. On days out of the hospital, my ritual is 2 cups of coffee, a vigil at the kitchen window. 2 blackbirds stand on the telephone wire. They do not speak, they step over electricity. This asylum has a room with 4 bathtubs, and I'm dropped in ice cold water. Surprise, the medication of the day. The surprise, supposedly, your body can feel greater pain than your brain. Numb, but certainly no real winter. I censor myself before your altar, shelter in the liquor of reserved, composed, quiet. I have not found their addiction, though their virtues are praised. I am immune to their cocoon. The spoons with liquid that fill my mouth pour into another vessel. I have practiced and mastered my own healing, sitting in a room, my mind licking me clean. Dawes County, Nebraska. Silence buzzes like a fever over the prairie. A tomcat lies on the porch in the clear light of the moon. Stars ache with their blurred edges, letting time burn like a buffalo skeleton in the sun. Because I cannot awake with a single bright eye in my bones, I have unraveled within my own hands a mass of knotted threads. My failures hoarfrost over my bones. I stumble against the chairs I sit on and the door handles I clasp. These objects are comforting with their firm bodies. I have always wanted to be such a thing, with its corners all confidence. For them, death is not failure, but time spent. I remember you stood at the edge of the Badlands, saying words like hope, but the sky and grass, moving in reflections of one another unaligned, emphasized the absurdity. Maybe in a house I could believe you, maybe in a school or a church, but not there, where if we placed our toes beyond the ridge of the prairie, we dropped into impermanence. I felt you had a God in your mind you could match with words, but I didn't know how to interpret all the movement, the running clouds, the soil that would crumble under my hand. Assistance Cemetery, Copenhagen. We spent over an hour looking for Kierkegaard's grave. It wasn't far, but we kept taking wrong turns, kept walking over the same paths, and forgot we'd been there before. Among a cluster of family graves, surrounded by a black iron wrought fence, we saw a stone statue of a woman with a spiderweb draped over her face in a veil. Iridescent in the rain, the cobwebs silk finer than an eyelash, the veil both hiding and revealing her face at the same time. You had said, "Sometimes I want to know what it's all for." Our heels soft on the stones, our breath almost visible before our faces. You said want, but I felt you meant need, a sort of prerequisite to continue on, a survival that needs a different end. Today I cycled through a national park, between cedar trees, through sand dunes, among grasslands, but I kept seeing us lost among the graves, trying to find our way. I stopped at a marsh where the water and wet grass filled the air with its woodsy scent, not quite fertile and not yet dead. In a shallow nook, a wildflower grew, its whole body underwater but the head, a yellow blossom floating on the surface. This here is another ekphrastic poem, and it responds to a painting by the Dutch painter Jacob van As, and the painting is titled Still Life, and the poem is titled Interrupted Supper. I am not here to tell you that death is simply relocation, yet this still life radiates movement, a haunting of objects by those who left them. Lemon rind curled on a silver plate, pomegranate hollowed like a waning moon. I too have left a table unfinished. When I left home for the first time, the scent of honeysuckle hung in the air. The glass of water shook when I stood up. Light and dust bathed the orchard in translucent veil. Fallen apples rotted in the grass, and the rumble of a tractor pushed across fields to where I stood, next to my car, holding my suitcase. Birds stroked the feathers in the shadows of pines, and I balanced between two worlds, as one dreaming of rain while it rains outside on your window panes. In every world, what the body needs is secondary. I shed my silhouette on the gravel road beside a cornfield. Maple trees lined the road, and the farthest trees faded in the fog, their branches cobwebs, indistinct save a catch of light. Their disappearance measured, as though when I left home, I moved inside the sort of frame where you go on and on. Grandmother. What came first were the dresses made from chicken feed sacks, the rough material smoothed by your young hands on a table, early in the morning or late at night, perhaps by kerosene or by daylight swarming the open window overlooking the farm. Later came the cotton blouses, the polyester slacks, the lace for my mother's wedding dress, the rayon blend for my sewing lessons, patterns tossed aside, dotted chalk lines across fabric, pins stuck in and out, the tension knob twisted, these all being things that were done, your mind still silent to mine. And yet, this is the way I have known you, beyond our words, words that are really secrets holding their shape, birds that fall into formation, and then, upon nearing the ground, fall out. This last poem I'm going to read is titled A Fable. Under the leaves of a dogwood, forget-me-nots unfurl. In my village, everyone knows I've become a miniature person. I denied it until my sister took me to a lake and pointed into it. There, with my head reaching her waist, I saw how my actions have made me. Days of hauling water from the well, building the fire at the hearth, buying pork from the butcher. All the sounds of the meadow snapped shut, the sun's heat lifted from my back. and I remained in this form until I traveled up the mountain to the witch doctor and requested a new body. When she finished, my bones were splintered and still small. I wanted to know when they'd grow. The healing is part of the making, she said. Now I lie in a cave, listen to the black sounds of the forest, an owl's flight, water lapping a bank. Like night, I can close myself away and wait. It is not only the gods who go from death to life and back again in seasons. In all my graves, I have pulled the flowers down by their roots. With these yellow brushes, I paint a mud door, fragrant as birth. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kassandra. It's fabulous. All right. How are we doing, everyone? Doing good? All right. Next up, we have Lucy Adkins. Lucy, I'm going to read just a little bit from all this stuff. Lucy Adkins is a writer of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. Her poetry has been published in many journals, some like Rhino, Briarcliff Review, Sozier Poetry Review, and several anthologies. And her chapbooks include One Life Shining, Addie Finch, Farm Wife, from Pudding House Press, and Two Tone Dress, which was the winner of the 2019 Blue Light Press Poetry Prize. And did it win the Nebraska Book Award, right? Yeah, okay. And it also won the Poetry Book Award. No, it's 2021, right? Yeah. All right, and then a crazy little thing is forthcoming from WSC Press. We were trying so hard, Lucy, to get your book done in time, but we didn't get quite done. But hopefully we'll be hearing some poems from that.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So keep an eye out for a crazy little thing. It'll be coming here soon. And it'll be her first full-length book of poetry. Her fiction has appeared in South Dakota Review and Voices from the Plains anthology. Co-author of the Essential Writings and Creativity series, which includes Writing in the Community, Say Goodbye to Writer's Block, and Transform Your Life, and The Fire Inside, a companion for the creative life. For over 25 years, she has served as a leader of generative writing groups and workshops, and is currently a writing instructor for the Lark Song Writers Place. She's also the co-recipient of the Lincoln, Nebraska 2020 Mayor's Art Award for Excellence in the Literary Arts. Her MFA is from the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and Lucy currently lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I'm really excited, Lucy. Come on up.
Thanks for that great introduction, Chad, and thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see a room full of writers. I'll bet some writers out there, and people that love the written word. Thank you so much, Chad, for making this possible, and to Wayne State. So I'm gonna read some poems. Let's see, let's put that down there. Since it's Women's History Month, National Women's History Month, I'm going to start with a poem about my mother and a little history. My mother fell in love in high school and wanted to get married, and her dad said, my granddad, you can't until you're 18. So she turned 18 on the 13th of August, and she got married 2 days later. So I was thinking about that, what it might have been like for her. And so this poem is called My Mother, 17, and it's after a poem by Lynn Lifshin, a poet I admire. I think of my mother, 17, the night before she married. Her last night in her upstairs bedroom, mid-August, hot. Outside, cicadas droned against the tight bark of cottonwoods. Heat lightning flared in the west. At the foot of her bed stood the blanket chest her father had made, and inside gifts from the church lady's shower, sets of dish towels, mixing bowls, pillowcases embroidered. Marriage must have been a word like mauve or corsage, something exotic and fine, something out of reach. But here she was, about to try it on, like the blue dress packed away in her suitcase, the one she said my father liked, and the white one her mother ironed and hung upon and the white one her mother bought for $40, ironed and hung upon the door. She must have wondered what it would be like, her body like a blossom, like a ripened plum, her body a promise she had given, and in the morning would wash and dress, and her father, as they say, would give away. I'm going to come back to two-tone dress a little bit later, but I would like to, I'm really excited about Wayne State Press publishing A Crazy Little Thing, my first full-length poetry manuscript. It's been a long time coming, and I am just as pleased as I can be. I started writing some poems about Alabama a long time ago. I lived in Alabama for 2 years, and it was during the time of the Vietnam War, and we were there because of the draft, and I was married, and newly married, and I hadn't thought about that for a long time, and then all of these Alabama poems started to come. So I'll read a few Alabama poems. That's kind of the first part of A Crazy Little Thing, and we'll move on to some other things. So this first poem that I'm going to read is called How It Happened. Sometimes love comes to town carrying a duffel bag. He stands at the end of the sidewalk, his eyes dark and smiling, and you could dissolve into a puddle. You could melt like a chocolate bar left in the sun. All your life, it's love you've wanted. You've wanted it so bad. But you wish it wasn't a duffel bag. You wish it was a suitcase, a Pullman, a big old travel trunk. But it is love taking a step towards you and stretching out his hand. It is love pulling you into the musk of his body, his smell of sweat and cologne, and his odor of wanting you, and you fall for him. You are a rock dropped down a well. You are a lead weight on a fishing line. You sink hard and deep and do not want to come up. And now, here you are, ironing creases into his khakis. You are sewing on his stripes. You are 1,000 miles from where you grew up, calling these rented rooms, these white walls and gray painted floors your home. So that's how it happened. And we ended up in Selma, Alabama. Maybe you've heard of Selma, Alabama, from the Bloody Sunday that happened there over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I have a poem called The Edmund Pettus Bridge, so I'll read it now. It is silver gray, ugly, and arches over the Alabama River, river of the Old South, Piney Woods River, the water alive with mud guppies, mud turtles, mosquito larvae, snakes. From time to time, an alligator lazing up from Louisiana. I drive over it almost every day, but this is after the time it was the river of shame. I shouldn't say that, really. A river is a river. And maybe it was the river of hope they marched over. Reverend Reese and John Lewis, Linda Lowry and her little sister Joanne. The highway patrol stood right there, horses and billy clubs, their canisters of gas. And there on that edge, the first head cracked open. Oh, those 600 people, those 600, the voices of hundreds of thousands more. Sometimes a dragonfly perches on the rail. Sometimes it flies to the page where the story is written down, blue-winged, and beautiful. This is a poem about something that my husband, here's my husband Tom here in the front row. My husband and I happened to witness on a Sunday morning. We stepped out our front door and this is what was going on. It's called Neighbor. One Sunday morning, she stood in her nightgown on the front steps of her bungalow, good-looking, tall and blonde, a real woman in the way we think of women like Tammy Wynette or Reba McEntire, sultry women, strong women, the kind not taken to bullshit or suffering fools. Her gospel-singing man was on his way to the car, and she was letting him go, guitar case in hand, a bottle of some brown sorrow, some treachery he had poured out and drunk and planned to take along. Then, too, there was the heartbreak of a song. It was there on the burned-out lawn, a song about a bad moon, water rising, mistake after mistake made in back seats or back rooms. There were wrong turns onto the wrong roads. There was that between them. You know the song already. You know the words. Oh, I guess this is a song about another neighbor. I didn't realize that when I put these together this morning. This was about a next door neighbor in that duplex with the gray painted floors. And it's called, this poem is called Snake. If you ever have a chance to write a poem about a snake, do it, okay? Snake. There was the day my next door neighbor drove his Chevy Impala up to our adjoining duplex doors, drove on the grass and the sidewalk, got out and knocked. Come on, he said, I've got something to show you. So Charlie and I went out in the hot Alabama sun, Alabama with its rainforest humidity, its old mustiness, and there on the blazing range top hood of the Impala was a rattlesnake as big around as a big man's bicep and long as the hood of Charlie's He-Man car. And cars were long in those days, their hoods stretched out to shelter the thousands of horses beneath. And there was snake blood oozing on blue metal and snake flesh burning. The sun beat down and the heat rose, and I wondered why Charlie thought I would want to see that snake. Would he bring me a copperhead next, or an alligator lassoed in the swamp woods out behind the base? But that was the time Vietnam was going on. And there was a president who lied to you, one of them anyway, and I shouldn't have been surprised at anything. This is a poem about how you happen to end up with that other person, and I think of A Crazy Little Thing as a book of poems about love and craziness, because sometimes they go together, and a loss and loneliness, because sometimes they all kind of seem to work up in there together. This is called How They Ended Up Together, and it's about meeting in college and how strange things happen. There was a required English class. You could choose linguistics or transformational grammar, and they both signed up for grammar. She liked the odd compositions, structure tree diagrams, the linking together of noun to noun and verb to verb, the necessity of conjunctions. He'd noticed her, he said, for her old-fashioned name, like something out of the last century. She didn't know what to think about that. But she liked his smile, the cut of his jeans, his plaid shirt, his hair a little too long, which meant his politics were all right, and that was important. He said, "Weren't you in my physics class?" And she said she wasn't, but she was thinking chemistry. It was raining that day, as it had been doing all fall. She had an umbrella, and he didn't, and they were both headed in the same direction. Got a list here of what I'm going to do. Let's see if I can find it. We might just follow along here. I want to read this poem that I wrote in, I was lucky enough to take a class from the poet Kim Adonisio, and I really admire her poetry. I check her out. If you're into poetry, I check her out. So I was taking a class with her, and she gave us an assignment, and she says, okay, take 20 minutes or so. You just sit there, and I want you to write about something. And I can't remember, like I said, I can't remember what it was, but this is the poem that I wrote in that class. It's called Piano. There is that certain time of evening walking when you could hear the pianos of happiness, their music falling from the open windows of one or two houses along your way. You are just walking, staving off heart disease, or toning your legs. Or maybe you are walking your dog with a little plastic baggie in your pocket. And there is that music, a tinkling like knives and forks against plates, a riff or two of laughter. And suddenly, you know loneliness like you've never experienced before. You are the last child left at daycare, the little hand on 6, Miss Julie looking anxious out the door. You are the girl who takes herself to prom, the boy warming the bench, the swallow shut out of Capistrano. You are every moment of lonely that can happen in a life. Sometimes we limp along in this world, missing something we cannot even name. Maybe it is a piano, a Steinway, a knobby baby grand. Maybe it is an upright with cracked varnish and a sticky middle C. Just a piano. Something to play the torch songs of our lives, the reggae, the rhythm, and the blues. Thank you. I was glad that she asked us to sit there and just write for 20 minutes. Okay, let's see, how are we doing here? All right. This poem is called Happiness. And here's an assignment for all you writers out there. Think about a time you were happy, outrageously happy. And then set a timer for 15, 20 minutes and write. And this is what I wrote. That's what I have. It's called Happiness. Okay, you guys are probably figuring out that I'm older than most of the people in this room. I'm going to tell a date here, and that's going to confirm it. There was that summer in 1971, living in one half of a 2-stall garage in Rantoul, Illinois. We moved the cars out, put in a shower stall, a stove, and a table, set up a bed behind a pegboard, and there we were. Edgar and Doretta from West Virginia lived next door. funny talkers, we thought. Edgar changed the all in the car, rotated the tars. Doretta served iced tea. They were sweet and exotic, and we were young and soon to move on. There was Syracuse, New York ahead of us, maybe. San Antonio, Biloxi, Mississippi. There was a college degree for me, books to write, the children yet to be born. All we wanted was each other, this day, then the next one, and the next. All we wanted was everything, and it would be easy. Easy as getting up in the morning and slipping on your shoes. Easy as the first step out the door. Okay, then time goes on, and this is called the 7th year of their marriage, and this is after a poem by Kim Adonisio. Okay, this is the 7th year of their marriage. That bridge out with no sign, that dirty trick, that detour, that muddy road on a dark night, the road map with the most important page missing, that obliteration, that oil change forgotten and insurance lapsed, that dog in the headlights and nick of time braking, foot still shaking on the pedal, those hearts in their throats, that great engine cooling and ticking. Okay, this is a poem about when you're worried. Ever get worried about stuff? It's not going to turn out right. It's called Trouble Heart. Some instructions to old Trouble Heart. Listen, old Trouble Heart, old love muscle. There is more going on here than breaking. You worry wart, you anguish hog. Root around for disaster somewhere else. What we have here is this world. The snow is melting. And yesterday the crabapple trees were dotted with robins. I don't know what it is that is coming or how long it will take to get here, but there is happiness in this white paper, this blue pen. There is joy in this cup of creamed coffee and waking up every morning to drink it. Let's not tiptoe around. Let's plan on things turning out. Let's keep on going a long, long while. This poem is called The Poet in Middle Age Thinks About the Future. When I am no longer young, let me live in a house with the dust of the years settling around me, the good dust, the friendly dust. And let me have windows to the south, so that in January, in February, the low light of the sun will stream in and pick out the dust motes floating. Let me see the beauty in that. And let me pick up my pen and work as I always have, to get the words down right, to get at the heart of the matter, to get at the truth. Let me see the silver in the snow, but also the purple and pink and brown, struggling, trying, never getting it exactly right. But let me come close. And let there be someone in the next room to bring me a cup of coffee once in a while and prod me to keep on going. And yes, let there be a good old dog to generate a little yellow in the snow. Let me be able to smile about that and laugh about that and write a foolish poem about that once in a while. Thank you. Well, I think I want to read a few poems from Two-Tone Dress. And let's start with a poem called The Thing About Love. Now, sometimes you write a poem and you're not exactly sure what it really means. And for me, this was a poem like that. It's a nice idea, my friend says, but you can't varnish a piano with it. And she's right, though I've tried a time or two, spreading it on thick with a bristle brush or a cosmetic brush, or perhaps with a spatula, flipping it over like a fried egg and letting it sizzle. Maybe it's an off-brand, you think, or paint and not varnish, not the real thing at all. Yet you spread it on, and that piano, it doesn't make music anymore. What you need is something you can depend on, like the earth in its orbit, darkness that comes with each revolution, and then the light. Maybe that's a kind of religion. Still, I believe in love and in pianos. Music that comes to you from who knows where, walking on a summer night. There are birds that walk the ground, striding out like stalwart men, one foot after another, and birds on trees that walk head first upside down and live their whole lives like that, perfectly content. This poem is called When Asked, I Tell My Heartsick Young Son. Love comes like a badger with a growl at the back of its throat, like a lynx or an ermine, a fox at the edge of the clearing, its ears cocked and its eye on you. It is just waiting. It comes like the geese in springtime, honking and wing flapping, traveling thousands of miles. Oh, love is relentless. Sometimes it comes like a raccoon at night, rattling your garbage cans and shining on you the lanterns of its eyes. And yes, it comes like a red-tailed hawk swooping suddenly down, and you are caught, ecstatic, helpless. There is piercing of the breast and blood. You tear your shirt open. It comes. Maybe a couple more, is that all right? Okay. Sometimes it's nice to write a persona poem. I think for me it gives me a kind of freedom, like I can pretend to be somebody else, and I can say things that maybe I would try not to say as myself. So this is a persona poem. Oh, I guess it's not a persona poem. I apologize. I wrote it first as a persona poem, and I thought, no, this isn't going to work. I changed it to third person. Never mind. All right. It's kind of from her point of view, though. It's called Life with the Famous Painter, and it's for Camille Danseau Monet, 1847 to 1879. She was the wife of Monet. They lived together a long, long time before they got married. She was his model. There's a famous Monet painting where she's wearing a green dress, and he paints her in that green dress, and that kind of helps him to become famous. And then she gets sick, and they bring in somebody else into the household to help take care of her. And of course, Monet decides to start hanging out with Alice. So this is called Life with a Famous Painter. That's maybe more than you needed to know, I guess, for the poem, but it's interesting stuff. Life with a famous painter. She put on her green dress, and he painted her. Sat with Bazille and Courbet for the picnic in the wood. That was nothing. That was just time looking pretty or pensive, staring off into the distance to what was coming. There was their home in Argenteuil with the garden. She loved that. And he painted her with roses all around, sweet peas and cups of tea, little Jean toddling about. He could have married her sooner. She'd have liked that. And when sickness came and Alice moved in to help, he could have looked the other way. He didn't mean any harm. He was just a man, as they say, with a man's needs. Her life he never knew. The secret dreaming when he was off in the fields with his easel, or trudging away to paint the steam rising from those dreaded trains. Always that light he was after. When she was after something she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was just someone to know her, the way he seemed to know the dusk, the sea, the shadows on the water, the way they changed, the way they stayed the same. And I'll end with this poem. It's called Sometimes the Heart Goes Walking. Sometimes the heart goes walking, and it's like those times, those fixes you get it yourself into, when the walk isn't far, the distance to go, but you're alone, and the dusk falling like a dark blanket. That's when you hear the footsteps behind you, the steady click of hard shoes on concrete. Innocent, most likely, maybe, but there is only you, the in and out of your breath, your foolish heart on a walk it didn't have to take. But what can you do? The lonely self of you questing, the longing, wanting self of you taking a walk, hoping for the best. Thank you so much. You're a great audience, and for all the writers, and happy writing, okay?
Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. Fun. I like how we even got a little bit of a lesson in there, too. That's good. You guys write that down? Students? Get that down? All right. Let's, again, thank you guys so much. And Lucy, Kassandra, thank you guys for reading. How about a round of applause? Thank you guys. Good. And before everyone runs away, I just, again, Poetry Slam 44 tonight, Max Bar and Grill. You guys should come. Nicolas Cage will be there. It starts at 7. If you want to participate, $5, 4 poems. Get there about 6:30. Now, Sigma Tau, we still got some snacks back there. These people are going to come towards you and throw all their money at you, all right? So get some baked goods. There are some